Is ecstasy a bad thing? Are ecstasy and the more balanced state of equanimity really opposites? Are they even at odds with each other? I think both have a place in our spiritual lives. The joyful experience of ecstasy sure feels good, but spiritual traditions often emphasize the importance of equanimity, often in a way that feels like ecstasy is a bad thing, like it's the irresponsible cousin that should be dimmed as soon as its spark is lit. And don't get me wrong, a balanced state can definitely be a good thing for living our lives and interacting with others. However, ecstasy is joy, and it's very much related in my mind to how the present moment feels when we're savoring it. The dictionary definition is an overwhelming feeling of happiness or joyful excitement. Wikipedia says it's a subjective experience of total involvement with an object of awareness, which again reminds me of immersion in the present moment. And I believe that savoring is an extremely important spiritual practice for us that perhaps isn't talked about enough in a spiritual context. And one of the reasons it's so important is because of our mind's natural tendency towards the negative. It's just in evolution been something that was important for our survival, that we would notice the negative or notice something bad that could be happening or might crop up. But that also makes it something that we then have to consciously counteract. People might also resist joy, ecstasy, savoring, any of those terms you want to use for it, because they might have negative or limiting beliefs about pleasure. Anything from thinking that it can lead people towards unhealthy activities to thinking that something pleasurable must then not be a worthy or industrious type of an activity. I think there's many ways that we consciously disagree with those ideas or those kinds of limiting beliefs, but we might still hold them unconsciously. And I want to point out one other less obvious aspect of this, which is that it's kind of convoluted to assign savoring in general to a bad trajectory and worthy industrious activities alone to the category of wholesomeness, since, for example, checking off to-do lists actually releases dopamine. So you could just as easily say that busyness and productivity are us trying to max out our brain chemicals. So, what I want to share with you is that the potential pitfalls of ecstasy can be worked with in just the same way as anything. The point is not to hold onto or cling to any particular moment. But that doesn't mean we can't savor it. To me, not savoring a pleasurable moment is resisting that moment and turning away from presence just as much as resisting a moment of difficulty is. So, how can we savor without clinging? I think of the Mary Oliver quote from her poem, Wild Geese. You have only to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. You can hear the non resistance and sinking into presence in those words, let the soft animal of your body. You can hear that acceptance of what's there in the moment, in that love what it loves. So, this may feel obvious as we're turning our intention towards this idea of practicing savoring, but let's make it concrete with some tips in the form of steps that we can take to practice it. So, first of all, step one for practicing savoring in the moment, I'm calling mind the gap. You might have heard that if you've ever been to London and been using their tube, which is the subway system there, because there's a voice that tells you to mind the gap between the train and the platform. But in this case, what I mean by it is that there's a moment between your thoughts when your mind wants to move on to the next thing. Now, that could mean moving from thought to thought, like you're having a thought about a particular experience consciously, and then your mind wants to move on to a thought about something else. Or it could be that you are actually experiencing something in the moment, but your mind is sort of ready to draw you away. So, for example, maybe you notice an exquisite sunrise out the window in the morning, but you also need to go start the tea or start breakfast or something like that to keep your morning routine going in a timely fashion. So that could be a conscious thought that you're having that you need to move onward with your day, or it could be the subconscious grooves of your mind that are pulling you towards your usual routine. And maybe there's even some motor memory involved there, right? Our body just takes us to the kitchen for the next step of our morning routine. In either case, if you can notice that moment of switching away from the sunrise in this case, you can expand that moment, expand that gap, and then make your conscious decision about what to do next. So that's step one, is to mind that gap, which means noticing it, and then expanding it a bit so you can make your conscious decision. The next step, step 2 for savoring as a practice, is to dive instead into how the moment feels. This is the savoring part, right? So, really, to do this, you can make sure to come into the present moment by using all of your senses. You can also be noticing your thoughts as well as your body, maybe what your sort of heart space feels like, what your emotions are, whatever you might call your energy and spirit, how that feels. You might notice who or what's around you, maybe the dogs around you, maybe someone else is there with you, or maybe not. And you could notice how you are with them there in the moment, or maybe you sense their presence in the house, in the same example of the sunrise. But the point really is that then you will be there savoring. And to get back to that word ecstasy, it's that joy of the moment that you're experiencing. So then finally, very, very, very important step number 2, when the moment passes, whether it's that you're genuinely pulled away to another commitment, so more because the thoughts actually do pull you away in that case, but not just by rote or without conscious intention, or whether the sunrise is now over. The point now is that you need to let it go when it changes, when it passes. So sometimes we can feel this as a subtle shift in ourselves too, that we can want to cling. We can want to cling to that pleasurable moment. But if we're aware to look for it, we can notice if we're trying to do that in a way that we might not notice if we're not aware to look for it. And it's hard to describe, of course, but if you do try to look and notice if something shifted, it's going to feel like some kind of shift in the feeling of the savoring. So instead of it feeling like that immersion in the moment, what it might feel like, for example, is like trying to eke out maybe the last moments of the pleasurable feeling, right? So it's what that really is that starting to cling, or maybe you're full on in clinging already. Sometimes we don't notice it till we're past there, but the important thing is to notice it. And so then now to realize that moment is different now and that it's past. And then it'll be the time to move on to what is next, whatever that next moment will be in your day, in your life, in your experience. So hopefully that was helpful to kind of make it concrete and pare it down into some steps there. Like I said, I think intention is so important, and it's probably the most important thing because it's part and parcel of the awareness of what's happening and making conscious decisions about it. But it's also true that if we have a very concrete set of steps that we can practice or way we can approach things, then it's easier for us not just to slip into unconsciousness again. So let me know in the comments if you have any more ideas or thoughts about savoring the ecstasy of the moment. And I would greatly appreciate it if you would like and subscribe or share this content if you found it helpful or valuable. And I'll see you in the next video.